He wants to be your general treasurer, and he's here tonight. Welcome into my state of mind. I am Dan Yorke. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening. Ernie Almonte is my guest, a former state auditor general who will make his second appearance here since we began the television broadcast. We'll keep these statewide candidates moving on a regular cycle, and Ernie is, full throttle on his state treasurer race, and he's got some good competition with a couple of key guys, Frank Caprio and his third opponent. We'll talk about that. But we'll get to it after the rundown. We've got plenty of stuff that we need to do here this evening. Just kind of, really, where is it? This is getting weirder and weirder and weirder. The idea that Crimea is going to kind of vote itself out of the Ukraine doesn't seem like the United States is going to play around with that, nor is the Ukrainian interim prime minister. We'll discuss. This is okay. This is okay. The governor went out of town. That's fine. Don't get excited about it. Costs us a few bucks. It's okay. Next item. This is a developing conversation here, and can I say I'm ripping over one aspect of it? I'll explain why. This is not good news for our gambling dollars if this whole thing turns out. And I made a boo-boo last night. Take two. I'll explain. Alrighty, let's rock and roll, Laura, and see what we got up here on the screen. You know, I wish we could do it with the plane, but this is not funny. This is tragic, and it's getting more and more mysterious. The headline from Fox News, there it is. The Chinese are saying, we thought we saw some debris. Now it's not, it's not really working out. It's not what we thought it was, so can't help you. And the Malaysian transport minister updates that and a couple other things in his recent statements.
A Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency surveillance plane was dispatched this morning to investigate potential debris shown on Chinese satellite images. We deployed our assets but found nothing. We have contacted the Chinese embassy, who notified us this afternoon that the images were released by mistake and did not show any debris from MH370.
It's always weird when you get relief from finding debris thinking, oh, okay, that's where it went down. You shouldn't feel good about that anyway. It's just a weird thing, right? And then you get this headline because you've got all these other things coming in here. The oil rig worker says he saw the plane go down. Now, this is very strange. This gentleman sent this email, and that's credited to Bob Woodruff. He tweeted this out from ABC News. This gentleman was working outside Vietnam on an oil rig, and he says, I saw the plane in flames at a very, very high altitude for about 10 to 15 seconds, and it was burning. Okay, and well, if it hit the water burning, there'd be remnants of the plane around. He didn't say it was a fireball. He said it was flames. So I don't know. And from here, I can promise you, well, at the beginning of this conversation, I don't offer any expertise, but it's getting kind of crazy. On the radio today, on WPRO from noon to 3, the theories were fully abounding. Now, the United States is saying, look, this plane may have diverted into the Indian Ocean, but nobody's saying where it might have ended up. So they got to find this plane, because the theories are all about how it could have landed somewhere. How do you land a 777 in the middle of the night in some far? It takes 77. I looked this up. 7,700 feet of runway space to land a plane that big. I don't know. I hope they find it. Let's move on. New York Times headline: Obama makes push for political solution to crisis in Ukraine. That's all we're going to have is a political solution here, right? There's not going to be some military thing between the East and the West, between Russia and the United States over this, I certainly hope. Last night, we had two pretty sharp Brown professors, both of whom have Ukraine experience, one of whom is from Ukraine, talking to us about what our options are. Where's this going?
So that's a very good question.
And what do we do about it?
The United States is obligated to act under the Budapest Agreement. So the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for a guarantee from the United States, the UK, and Russia a guarantee of its territorial integrity.
Is this going to resolve well or not?
I don't know, and I'm worried.
What about you?
I would echo that. I think the world is fundamentally different today than it was a month ago.
Now these professors have a feeling that the Crimean population, which is where this whole thing is all centered, has a whole lot less urgency to want to separate from Ukraine than has been forwarded here. So this soon-to-come referendum might be some kind of, like false play. The interim prime minister from Ukraine is in America, met with the president in the last 24 hours, and they're working on a political solution which may give the Republic of Crimea a little bit more autonomy, independence on things like taxes and the like, but certainly not a separation. And John Kerry's working the diplomacy in Moscow over the same thing. I would hope that this whole thing rolls that way, but these professors feel that the United States has a significant role in this and an obligation via that treaty to make sure that we hold on to Ukraine's sovereignty, including Crimea's, as part of Ukraine. Stay tuned. This is important stuff, one of the biggest conflicts we've had in a long time. And just because we're in southern New England, fat and happy in the late winter, doesn't mean we shouldn't be paying attention. All right, next item. Relax. A lot of people wondering, what the heck's going on. The governor went to Minnesota and he took his taxpayer-paid staffer who wrote the speech, and it's taxpayer money and the like. First of all, I don't have a big problem with the governor of the state of Rhode Island having FaceTime elsewhere, even if it's on our dime. Here's the great thing. Every time that Lincoln Chafee goes out of state, it keeps him busy and he has less chance to make any trouble here. You have to think about it that way. The less FaceTime he has here, trying to build up some kind of last-minute attempt at some kind of legacy, the safer we are from some bad ideas. Just a thought. Next item, this is a good idea. Has been a good idea from the beginning. It all started a few weeks ago when I was lamenting all the potholes on the radio, and Carl Waddenston, the president of Vibeco, who runs this manufacturing company, he's in Richmond. He's now getting some attention past the television and the radio show here, and that's a good thing. The Journal runs a story today about how he's ramping up pothole repairs. And there you see Alan Fung in a picture. We have the video of that as well. And this is a Vibeco video. That's the mayor of Cranston, Alan Fung, actually fixing a pothole with this machine that compacts and rolls the cold patch better than the throw-and-go strategy. The potholes are fixed for 4 or 5 times the length of time, and really, you don't have to double back at all. Now, we have, I think, about 15 communities so far in the state of Rhode Island since we began this discussion with Carl, who have either asked for or have obtained already one of these GR 1600 machines. That's great stuff. Here's the problem. The city of Providence hasn't. The city of Providence has the biggest pothole problem. And the city of Providence has a mayor who's running for governor. And I noticed today when I was scrolling down my Twitter feed during the radio show today that he's got more time to do this. How about this tweet? Great to meet with seniors at Berkshire Place this morning and talk about plans for the future of Rhode Island. And he's got that nice gentleman at the senior home. Well, here's what I tweeted back. I said, how about this? I got a good idea. Why don't you try meeting Vibeco to fix some potholes before you make your next campaign stop? Do your job. These elected officials who, are doing something bigger in their minds, advancing their political careers while they're forgetting the job that they do, no good. The city of Providence has a huge problem right now with the potholes. You know that 195 redevelopment thing that we talked about yesterday? Only a handful of people showed up to the Q&A about the big development down there. That may or may not be an indicator of the overall interest by developers, but who would want to bring their fancy Cadillac down? The kind of capital investors that have the money to build $50 million buildings here, there, and everywhere of the 195 complex. Who'd want to do that when they see the infrastructure from the Jewelry District all the way down to Point Street, all the way down to South Main, being like a moon crater? Okay? Duh! Now, I don't blame Angel Tavares for the potholes, but I blame him for not paying attention and for being clueless and petty about who he hears what, when, from where does he get the, look, his buddy Alan Fung took a machine. Alan, take a machine and fix some potholes. Favorability ratings are very, very fragile. And what else do we have here? Real quick. Yeah, this is not good. Quick headline. Saw this in the Herald in Fall River. That's the mayor of Fall River. He's saying now that Foxwoods is optioning 30 acres. Now, this is past the deadline that the Mass Gaming Commission has for these decisions, but you know, deadlines are made to be stretched if there's a better plan. This is curtains for this place. Yeah, Newport Grand, still a very important part of our financial picture. When Fall River competes with Newport Grand, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, we're in trouble. Stay tuned to that. And finally, take two. I said last night that URI played last night. Guess what? URI didn't play last night. URI basketball playing in the Atlantic 10 Conference and hoping to do some damage there. They play tonight against UMass, so we wish them the best of luck. And at press time, as we were getting our show on production, Jess told me that PC was up 7. What are they up now? Got a new score?
Yeah, it's 53-41.
53-41 while we were producing the program, which is PC up by 12. They beat St. John's and one more. They're in the show. Speaking of the show, there's a campaign on, and the General Treasurer would like to talk about his ideas. We'll talk about the current pension situation and a whole lot more. Stay with us.
We have reached a settlement, and that this settlement is in fact in the best interest of all the people in Rhode Island and of all the members who are public employees.
That was an interesting take by the State Treasurer Gina Raimondo weeks ago when the pension settlement was issued. Here's that latest headline on it, and this a few weeks back. Rhode Island pension trial set for September 15th, despite the deal. That's from Judge Sarah Taft Carter, who put kind of this quasi, very movable deadline on the whole thing getting resolved. Ernie Almonte is the former state auditor, and he's running for general treasurer, and has had a lot to think about this. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, great to see you as well.
So, I don't think you and I always agree on this whole thing, but fresh take. What do you think about the settlement plea?
Well, I do agree with the settlement plea because what we've been told is it solves about 95% of the problem, but it's 95% of the bill that was passed, not 95% of the problem. And my message has been the problem still is another $5 billion that's owed.
Right. That can't be missed in this whole thing. And I think the now treasurer, who you are not running against, she's running for governor, but the now treasurer has been kind of cute in terms of how she explains this settlement plea. Look, don't you believe, well, clearly you don't. Let me ask you this. Why don't you believe that the constitutional question of whether the General Assembly has the statutory power to change pensions is actually more important and integral to this case than the actual numbers agreement?
Okay, well, for me, I look at it, I'm a very pragmatic person, so I look at what we do with clients all the time. In the business world, they're always deciding cost and benefit. So the way I look at it is we have limited funds in the state of Rhode Island. If you can get 95% of, or 95% of the solution from that original bill in hand, done deal, we can walk away now, I think we should do that. Doesn't mean we're all done with the other $5 billion, because we're not. We still have to address it. The fact of making a constitutional question, I really believe, how long are we going to go? That could take several years.
But that's the basis of the lawsuit, Ernie, right? So the unions actually argued testing whether or not the General Assembly even has the right. So even if this settlement plea, like 6 unions say fine, good, everyone signs off, it doesn't resolve whether the General Assembly has the power to adjust again, whether the economy goes up, down, or sideways. We haven't addressed the question as to who has the juice to change the numbers.
Well, yes, that is the case, but the way I look at it, if you can get $4 million off the table of the liability, put that to bed, now the next thing we can do is look at the $5 billion and address that one. If this,
well, who's going to have the appetite to do that? Well, let's talk about this. Yeah. Let's not argue the same thing over and over again.
Okay.
Running for treasurer,
yes, sir.
Are you having an idea for the other $5 billion?
Well, absolutely do.
Okay.
Yeah. So
tell me about it.
What I would do is, first of all, one of the main things to do as the treasurer is to develop and execute a strong investment strategy. And by increasing returns, reducing expenses, diversifying the investments, make it sustainable, that'll help reduce the liability. So you have to achieve earnings higher than what's in the assumed rate of return for the pension plan. If you can do that, that helps drive the liability down. The big thing that I plan on doing is helping cities and towns and the state to make sure that anyone new that comes into the system does not add to the liability. Clearly, by just getting an actuary to run the numbers before you sign a contract. That usually doesn't get done in the cities and towns or the state. All I'm saying, bring in experts, run the numbers.
Say that slowly. I don't think everybody understands what you just
I
said.
apologize.
No, I'm asking for emphasis.
Okay.
You were clear. The cities and towns don't run actuarial reports before they run their plans.
Correct. And if they just brought in an actuary, paid a fee up front to determine when I sign this contract, how much am I adding to my liability? Well, that doesn't get done today. I'm saying make that a requirement. So that way we know whenever a contract is signed, we are not increasing the liability.
And as treasurer, how would you cause that outcome?
Okay. Well, one of the things I plan, the second pillar of the 4-point plan as a treasurer, is to develop a financial expert resource team. We would be able to go out to the cities and towns and help them. Say, look, what we'll do for you is we'll help run the numbers. Before you sign that contract, let us run the numbers, and we'll tell you what the situation is.
This comes from, and every candidate brings their own toolbox, right? Your experience as Auditor General flavors this, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because you used to do that, run numbers for communities when they asked for help.
Correct.
Mostly.
Right, right.
Right?
Well, that's why it's everyone has to understand the treasurer's office is a technical position. You need to have someone that has the skill set to run the numbers and to make those financial decisions. I have years, over 30 years of experience, education experience to do that. And as you know, as the Auditor General, I got called into a lot of these communities when they had financial problems to solve them. I actually like that. I like when the problem is quite complex. That's my space I love to be in. And I always tell them, I'm not running for office to jump somewhere else. I just want you to give me all your problems and let me help you solve them. If someone would just run the numbers ahead of time, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today.
All right, more on the treasurer's race with Ernie Almonte when we come back. Stay with us. So it's early yet. Most of you aren't thinking about the state treasurer's race. We're kind of wrapped up in a governor's race and that kind of thing. What's it like to be kind of flying under the radar screen, building a campaign, running for state treasurer?
Well, I wish it was in the limelight, not because the people would know who I am, but I feel the problems are so severe for the future of our children and even for the unborn that people should be worried about what's going on in the treasurer's office. If you do a good job, you can help put everyone on a pathway to success. If you put the wrong person in that office that doesn't have the skill set, we can ruin it for the next generation. They'll just leave.
So what's your revised thought about Gina Raimondo's management of the portfolio and the like?
Well, first of all, I believe that the treasurer, when she stepped into that office, that she was very courageous and tackled a problem that everyone ignored in the past. That was a very good thing.
The pension reform.
The pension reform. She professionalized the office, and she tried to reduce risk with hedge funds. But hedge funds are a touchy subject in our state, as you can imagine, because they're not transparent, they're high cost, and people don't know enough about them. But if we were investing your personal money, we probably would have a hedge fund in there.
When you say she professionalized the office, she took the office from Frank Caprio, who's now looking to make a return to the office and will be your opponent, along with Seth Magaziner in the Democratic primary. Are you suggesting that was not a professionally run office under Frank Caprio?
I believe that Treasurer Raimondo brought it up to a much higher level.
Example?
The individuals that are in the management team that are making the financial decisions are a much higher level. And that's what I would do. I've always been successful by bringing in bright people much smarter than I am. And I believe that's what she did there.
Caprio would say that he mitigated damage again in just the worst bear market we've ever had, in a recession that was the greatest since the Great Depression. No?
No. And, he served for 4 years, and in 1 year alone, they lost $2 billion. $2 billion. We only had $6.8 billion in that. Another 3 years like that, we'd have no money.
Well, I'm sure that when the time comes, you and he will come here and talk about that. What's your take on the status of the Treasurer's office going forward? You got to give Gina Raimondo credit. Whatever we're saying about her gubernatorial campaign tactics now, she did make the office a little bit more high profile by stepping in with a bully pulpit to drive pension reform. What bully pulpit do you want to grab?
Well,
if any.
Well, for me, there's several things. Number one, I still believe the pension is a problem for the state of Rhode Island.
Right.
It's still $5 billion in the hole, so that's still a serious problem. And I was talking about that 15 years ago and putting light on the subject. I always figured you put light on the subject, light will create heat, and heat will cause action. Well, it's still not done. It's not done in the cities and towns.
They're a disaster.
that has to be tackled. If you don't, I don't know what business would ever want to move to our state if they thought the cities and towns were financially unstable.
But the big key is that the Treasurer's Office, well, I guess it's like what Raimondo had. She didn't have statutory presence or power over what the legislature did with the governor to change the numbers, still in dispute by the lawsuit.
Yes.
Still driving on that one.
I know you are.
But you also don't have the jurisdiction over cities and towns, so it's very much a different lane. The difference is that most of those pension deals are contractual and not statutory. It makes it harder for reform, right?
I agree, but the thing is, I have the ability to bring people together. I did as the Auditor General. I was always called in to help when there were financial troubles. I had no stick to get everyone in line. I had to bring all the parties together. That's what it takes. It takes collaboration, and I can prove it with running the numbers, and again, making it very public, using a bully pulpit. Say, here it is. Here's a solution.
All right, come back a lot, all right?
I'd love
it's
to.
going to be it's going to be an interesting campaign, and the Treasurer's Office race is not a secondary issue for us because you know what? It's the custodian of our dough. Good to see you, Ernie.
Great to
When we
see
come
you.
back, your state of mind. Stay with us. So it looks like PC's got the game in hand as we end our broadcast. You already know the final score. That's a good thing. All right, let's go to the state of mind. 228-1886. Send me a little voicemail. We'll roll it on the air. Email me at stateofmind@myritv.com or Facebook post or tweet at Dan Yorke Show. Here's a Facebook post I found interesting. Okay, so if RI2, which really should be RI cubed, is implemented, what will keep the graduates in Rhode Island? Lorraine says on Facebook. This is about Gina Raimondo. You've seen her. She was here announcing her Rhode Island Innovation Institute plan. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no campus. She wants to build campuses with academics and business types and have them sit, but there's nobody's graduating from these campuses. This is another one of those ideas that you'll have forgotten about by the time the election starts, I promise you, or soon thereafter. I'll see you tomorrow night on MyRI TV at 7:30.